All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA DFS video. We got a small two-game slate. Got Chuck here as well. Kind of what your initial thoughts for the two-game slate?
Well, first of all, this in-season tournament created such a weird NBA schedule for this week. We have 3 days with 2 games each, and then I think Wednesday's a massive slate. I think we're off one of the days for some reason, or maybe just the schedule's not out yet. But
Yeah.
2 game slates, it's kind of tough because to win like the large field GPPs, you probably have to have the actual perfect lineup, unless there's like some unknown guy that just has a really good game or something. And it doesn't appear like we have great value on today's slate. Thankfully, Tyrese Halliburton's in, or maybe not
Is that?
thankfully.
Yeah, that makes the slate more straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, I thought like I ran some lineups without Tyrese Halliburton in, and I was just getting all the Pacers. I kind of still am getting all the Pacers, and it's kind of weird because I think it was just illness, but he's the top of the model. He's good to go. He's good to go. It looks like he's still pulling a little bit of ownership, but I think that's a spot that we can attack. Him and Jason Tatum look like they're far and away the best.
Mhm.
The top plays, I guess, the top studs. And Tyrese Halliburton is just pulling so much less ownership now. His price is kind of high, and it's a tough matchup against Boston. But I think Tyrese Halliburton's a spot I want to attack a little bit.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then we also have Porzingis out, so the question becomes: do we want to run it back potentially with like White and Horford, who have kind of been crushing with him off the court? Definitely interesting situation. I mean, maybe we just start with the Pacers as well. Like Jalen Smith being out, you wouldn't think that would be a big mover, but it kind of sort of been a big mover. Like Obi Toppin's been getting a little bit more run. I'm curious. He's only projected to get 26.5 minutes in this game. The previous 2 games have been getting like 30 or so minutes, which is kind of crazy to me. Is he someone that you're looking at all?
So Obi Toppin started out this year so poorly. Like he wasn't getting minutes, he wasn't playing well in those minutes, but he's kind of really turned it around the last couple of weeks. And I do think our minutes projection for him is kind of low, and that is a spot that I don't mind getting to today, even though the model doesn't love him. But if you give him, he's projected for 26 and a half. He played 34
Yeah.
last game. If you give him like 5 extra minutes, his value score goes up, his OF index score goes up, and his price is fine, I think. So that's a spot I do not mind getting to.
Um, is there anyone else there that you like? Because I thought I was going to be on a lot of Bruce Brown to start the day, especially if Halliburton was out. But I'm looking at his ownership, 56%, the highest owned projected pacer on both DraftKings and DraftKings and FanDuel. I don't exactly love that. What are your kind of thoughts there?
So on the previous slate where we had all that Pacers value, I believe Buddy Hield, at least over on FanDuel, was a super chalk and he failed. And then Bruce Brown came in kind of underowned and he had 30 real life points. He didn't put up many peripheral stats, but he was still a GPP winning play. And I wonder if people would be getting to him this much if he didn't completely go off last game. And he's still going to get the minutes, he's still going to have the usage, but Tyrese Halliburton's back on the court, so it's not quite the same situation. I think that's a spot that I don't mind getting away from a little bit.
Yeah, and he just shot the basketball well too. Like we haven't seen that from him. He averages 12.7 points on the season, and it's a matchup against Boston. Like I don't know, that to me is I get why people are getting there, but at the same time, I feel like it's a stay away. And I will say, like you mentioned it being a
I
two-game
lost you.
slate. Oh, sorry. You mentioned it being like a 2-game slate. I don't like for some reason, and I don't really know why, but those have been like the 2 best slates that I've had were like 2-game slates. And so maybe there's just an edge there in a situation like this where someone that probably isn't the best play becomes overowned and you can find some probably lower owned players that are strong pivots. And that might be what we have here with Bruce Brown. Is there anyone directly on the Pacers that you would see as like a good pivot? Like to me, Andrew Nembhard is someone that has been getting 20 minutes the last few games, could get to around 25 fantasy points. Is that a little bit too thin? We only have projected to get 20 minutes, but ownership wise, FanDuel 6%, DraftKings 34%.
Like I will say, so Andrew Nemhard, he was okay in the game that Tyrese Halliburton missed,
Yeah.
but he's like the worst Pacers play according to the model. And even if you give him a
Yeah.
few more minutes, it really doesn't help him that much. And so his 4,100 price is tough. It's tough to avoid on DraftKings. We really don't have good value today.
Yeah.
And on that note about doing well on 2 game slates, like I've been doing better on the night slates than I have on the main slates when it's just 2 or 3 games. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if people are just trying too hard to get a little bit different. Like you still have to find a somewhat low owned play to get a little bit different.
Yeah.
But if you're fading a couple pieces of chalk, you're getting leverage there too. And so, on today's slate, I don't think we have to try that hard to force in low owned plays that maybe aren't popping in the model or whatever across the industry. Um,
Yeah.
but like Andrew Nemhard, Benedict Mathurin, like they're both the 2 worst plays on the Pacers according to the model. And I
Mhm.
mean, they're all pulling ownership, right? But I think those are 2 spots I'm the least excited to get to.
Yeah, I mean, the game over and under is so high that we probably do want to be getting some sort of unique pieces there. We've seen this with the Pacers now. But let's go ahead and talk about Boston as well. So we know that Porzingis is going to be out in this game. We have seen Derek White step up. We had seen Al Horford step up. What are your kind of expectations for those two just right out the bat?
Well, Al Horford's been crushing with Porzingis out, and I feel better about him than I do about Derek White. Derek White's been great too, but just maybe it's the positions. But I'm getting
Hmm.
basically all the Al Horford on DraftKings and FanDuel today,
Yeah.
and 6,300 on FanDuel, 6,200 on DraftKings, and he's only center on FanDuel, so I understand why his ownership is slightly
Yeah.
less. But I think he's such a good play on today's slate, and that ownership actually seems a little bit low, even the 48% on DraftKings. I'm probably going to be even over that.
I'll second that. Just matchup wise as well. Cheap price tag. He's been crushing in this exact same situation. It seems like a spot to continue to jump on rather than to jump off. Is there any, I guess, if you're not loving Derek White, maybe at his ownership or maybe just not as much as Al Horford, are you looking at a lower owned Drew Holiday who's the same exact price as Derek White? And I think the thing with Drew Holiday is he just hasn't needed to go out and like be a dominant player in terms of like fantasy score. That maybe that switches tonight. I kind of don't mind gaining maybe a slight leverage there compared to Derek White. What are your kind of thoughts on those two?
So I haven't exactly looked into Drew Holiday's like defensive stuff over the
Hmm.
past few weeks, but like historically, he is the best perimeter defender in the NBA, and like you've heard other NBA players say it, the stats reflect that. And so Tyrese Halliburton, best player on the Pacers, and I don't know that it's like actually going to affect Drew Holiday's minutes or usage or anything, but I kind of feel like Drew Holiday has to play as many minutes as he can handle to be on the court to guard Tyrese Halliburton, who's been potential MVP candidate this season.
Yeah.
And so in my pre-stream runs, I was getting more Drew Holiday than Derek White,
Hmm.
and so I think that's a spot to get to. I mean, this whole game is pretty owned, though, so it's not like we're full fading anybody, right?
No, definitely not. And then yeah, so Tatum, we already mentioned, kind of like him. Jaylen Brown, he's at a good price tag as well, especially in this matchup. I certainly think he's a fine play there as well. Are you getting to any of those other pieces, Hauser or Pritchard at all?
So Peyton Pritchard is not a player that I ever like playing, and it's not like his ownership is egregious today. But with Drew
No.
Holiday and Derek White in, like the way that Peyton Pritchard gets there today, I mean, and he could get there without really having a blow up game, just based on
Yeah.
the slate. And his price is good; he lets us fit other pieces. But
Yeah.
like, how does he get minutes over Drew Holiday and Derek White? He comes in, hits a few threes, and he just has to play really well. But it's such a high total game that even if he only gets like 18 or the 21 minutes we haven't projected for, the price just lets us have so much flexibility with our lineup. So I don't hate it. And then Sam Hauser, I feel like I'd rather get to those cheap Pacers guys that I don't like over
Yeah.
Sam Hauser.
Yeah, I hear you there. I'll just pull him up. He's been getting the minutes. I mean, it's fine. It's a unique way to get there. But yeah, let's go and move on into kind of the next teams. We're kind of just doing a game by game breakdown, team by team breakdown. Looking at the Pelicans, and so just like I was looking at the prop lines this morning, I was kind of fascinated by a lot of the lines. Ingram's point total went from 20.5 to 22.5, which I found fascinating because I was looking at like the production for, that big three, if you will. He was the one that kind of took the biggest hit, which I probably just a small sample size there, but I was kind of surprised by that. And I bring that up because he's pulling in as the highest owned player of the three: Zion, CJ McCollum, and then Ingram. 28% on DraftKings, 47% on FanDuel. I'm looking at that, and I would just much rather get to CJ McCollum at 8K at 9%. I don't know. That might be my GPP spot tonight.
Oh no, I like that a lot. And so
Okay.
CJ McCollum, especially, he wasn't out with illness or injury. Like it was like a lung problem he was dealing with,
Mhm.
and so I don't know if people were afraid to play him in the first game he came back. He did play 31 minutes, and 31 minutes is enough for his ownership tonight that I think he can crush. And I think that we want to target this game just overall. The total is still crazy. It's not that much
Yeah.
lower than the Pacers Boston game. And they're just, these guys are coming in so much less owned overall that I think it's really good to just go a little bit overweight on this game compared to the other one.
Yeah, and I feel like with the pricing that we have here, you could realistically fit in Zion, Ingram, McCollum, and J Val if you wanted to do so. Now, I don't think we're going to be doing that, but at the same time, you could. Real quickly, before we like dive deeper in, I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts on the general minutes for both tonight and tomorrow night. Are we expecting like teams to give heavy minutes to these players, like instead of the let's say 35 projector so minutes that we might have for someone, is it safer to assume that they're probably going to get 38 minutes, aka are they really going to treat this like a playoff type game or not?
So initially, I didn't think the players were going to care that much about. I think
Yeah.
first place is 500K to each player on the winning team. I didn't think they were going to care that much, but when you get like, and LeBron James is known as one of the cheapest players in the NBA. He doesn't even pay for Spotify. But like when you have the star players talking about they really care, yeah, I would rather overestimate minutes tonight than underestimate them. And the point differential thing doesn't really matter anymore. And so it's not like Boston's going to be
Yeah,
up 30 against Chicago, still running the starters. But I think these guys care. I think that, and it's a light week too for NBA. Like we have a huge
yeah.
slate Wednesday, but I don't think they're worried about. There's no back to back after today. It's just another weird 2 game slate tomorrow, and so I think that's great. Yeah, I think the stars play a little bit more, and then maybe a player like Malik Monk off the bench.
Okay.
Maybe he's in line for a few more minutes, but as for the
Yeah.
rest of like the bench role players, I'm not going to be as interested. I think as I usually would.
Okay. Okay. That's actually it's a funny pivot because I do want to ask your question about maybe a bench role player. Trey Murphy. I believe he came back from not being healthy this whole season. He's not pulling in that much ownership. Played 22 minutes. My first question is, do we think he's going to get more minutes? Second, do we think he just had a good game because he hadn't played all season and he's just coming in ready to fire 7 for 13, 4 for 10 from three, 18 points? Like that does seem out of the norm.
Well, so he did come off the bench when CJ McCollum was in the previous game, but his minutes seemed fine. I mean, he played 2 rotations total. And I want to say his PRA was actually super low today, though, like 13 and a half or something. It
Yeah.
was a spot that I attacked a little bit. So
Mhm.
that alone is kind of concerning considering we probably need, 5X at his 5K price. We want 25 plus. But at the low ownership, this is a guy who can hit a bunch of threes. And so on a slate like today, he's still a fine GPP play, even though we're not going to project him for much more than 25 minutes.
And that brings up a secondary question. Does he eat into Herbert Jones at all? He is pulling as an okay value on this slate, but he's pulling in a lot of ownership, 38 and 44% projected ownership. I could see that maybe potentially being a thing now. I think Herbert Jones minutes are kind of locked in, but maybe some of the production is taken away now. That does seem like a big risk. Kind of what are your thoughts there?
So the way that Herbert Jones gets there anyway is through blocks and steal variants and then hitting a few
Mhm.
threes, right? Like he's not a fantastic rebounder. He's not really going to do much other than that. And looking at the rotation when CJ McCollum played last
Yeah.
week, it looks like Trey Murphy checked in for Zion. So him and Herb Jones did play a few minutes on the court together, which, like you kind of just alluded to, that probably does hurt Herbert Jones a little bit. But I mean, Herb Jones is playing next to Zion, and so Zion's a high usage player.
Yeah.
I don't think Trey Murphy being on the court necessarily takes away from Herb Jones. Maybe it's a few less minutes, but I don't mind Herb Jones tonight either.
Yeah. And then, kind of lastly, here, I mean, we can talk about Zion a little bit as well, but I want to get your thoughts on JVal because we haven't projected to get 29 minutes. And to me, if we're getting JVal at 29 minutes, I feel like we should just be loading up on him. Like the 20% ownership that he has, to me, seems way too low. I would have thought we're seeing an ownership or the minutes projected at around 30. Let's load up on JVal because that's always the biggest question mark with him. Is he going to get 30 minutes? And if he does, he typically is going to give us at least 35 fantasy points in this game. So I do want to get your thoughts on JVal.
So in this specific matchup, Sacramento doesn't go small. They always have a center on the court. If it's not Sabonis, then it's lately it's been JaVale McGee, but maybe sometimes they could go Trey Lyles too. But with Jonas Valanciunas, with Larry Nance out, that's like the biggest hindrance to Joe Val's minutes. Foul trouble, sure,
Yeah.
but I don't think they're going to be that comfortable running Zion at the center. Like maybe in the JaVale McGee minutes they will, but so Jovel played 36 minutes in the last game, but that was without CJ McCollum, and he played 31 in the game before that. And so, yeah, like I'm going to be right back on the Jovel train tonight. I think I was extremely over the field in the last time. He didn't quite get there, but the minutes are there. He just had a poor game, and against Sacramento, it's not exactly a big man matchup that I fear playing against, right?
I mean, I'm looking at the game log, and I personally don't care too much about game logs, and it probably gives me too much like confirmation bias when doing it, but 32.7 in 28 minutes, and then 21 minutes, 46 fantasy points against them. So seemingly does well against them.
Yeah, I mean, Demantis is good. Don't get me wrong, but I think that we're loading up on Joe Bell tonight. There's only 4 starting centers, and then in terms of like overall centers we're playing, I mean, JaVale McGee's not even in the model. But he's been getting minutes, so maybe we just haven't projected for less than 10 minutes. That's why he's not showing up.
Yeah.
But we just don't have that many center options tonight. And so this is a night where I'm allowing every position in my utility spot. But we still have to play one center, right? And Demantis is showing up for crazy low ownership on DraftKings, and it's kind of tough to get there. But him and Jovel both seem like really, really good GPP plays tonight.
Yeah, just looking at the center plays that are pulling in ownership right now, Miles Turner is the chalk, and we didn't even like mention him. That's fascinating, right? Like that's crazy. Let's just look at him a little bit more in depth, and then we'll get into the Kings. So I'm curious, has it been going off? I mean, kind of, right? But what are people hoping for with this? Like JaVale has a bigger ceiling, does he not?
Yeah, I mean, I think they both have pretty good ceilings, but I do feel like Jovel is going to hit his ceiling more often than Miles Turner will. And Miles Turner is going against Al Horford, but Al Horford has been really good recently, starting for Porzingis. And I don't know. I just look at the ownerships, and I didn't even know Miles Turner was this owned, but it makes me want to play more Demantis and more Jovel anyway. So.
That's crazy. Is that like a bet on him getting more minutes again? Like he typically gets around 30 minutes. We have him projected to get 30 minutes. Maybe he gets magically 35 in this game. I'm trying to figure that out. It's strange.
I'd have to take a look at see if I can pull up the Pacers rotations.
And actually take a peek at Isaiah Jackson while you're doing that, because he's only been getting 8 and 6 minutes. I don't think we can get there. Oh, I was hoping he was min price. Never mind. He's 3.8. Never mind. I was going to say, if he even gets 10 minutes, he could hit value. Never mind. That's a terrible call. Don't do that. Doesn't matter. Never mind. But yeah, let's see the rotation. I'm very interested.
So it looks like Isaiah Jackson did check in for Miles Turner in the previous game against the Heat. And then Isaiah Jackson checked out. Miles Turner came back in. Isaiah Jackson came back in for another minute, but then it looks like they kind of went small. And just looking at this, I have to assume that Obi Toppin was running at center, which against the Heat, the Heat didn't have a center on the court either, so both teams went a little bit small there. But I mean, maybe it makes us like Obi Toppin a little bit more if he has the potential to get those center minutes.
Yeah, I think we bet on Toppin getting more minutes tonight. I think that just seems to be the move. Obviously, we don't need to play him at the center spot on DraftKings. You could. Like, what are your thoughts on playing like Al Horford and Toppin and not even messing with the center? I feel like that's a kind of way to get unique as well. Obviously, more for DraftKings there.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all, especially, I think we still do want to play a true center tonight. So Obi Toppin in the center position on DraftKings is a little bit weird, but he's power forward eligible on both sites. And like I said, I've been completely out on Obi Toppin this season, but I'm coming around, and especially looking at this Pacers rotation from the last game, like I really want to get away from Miles Turner tonight. And now when I say that, it's a 2-game slate. We're not full fading anybody. We're still playing him, but if the field's going to get there 40% of the time, even in my pre-stream run, it looks like I got to Miles Turner 22% on DraftKings. I think I'm just going to bump up Obi Toppin even a little bit more.
I like that call. So let's go ahead and move on into the Kings. We do have kind of 2 centers listed there, Trey Lyles and also Sabonis. We kind of mentioned Sabonis a little bit. Let's get kind of the collective thoughts for him, because you kind of mentioned he's probably a little bit too high priced there on DraftKings. What about on FanDuel? Is he pulling ownership like 33% because he's also power forward eligible, and it's just a way of probably getting exposure to a guy that can really go off in a very appealing game?
I have to imagine that's the case because it's not like we're getting any super values on FanDuel that allow us to fit Sabonis more easily in. But yeah, I got
Yeah,
a ton of Sabonis in my early run, and just looking at my lineups, like I'm getting a ton of them in the center spot. So
interesting.
yeah, it's kind of odd. But so Trey Lyles, he was marked as out in the last game. There was no news about it, but he played, and so I'm not quite sure what's going on
NBA
with Trey
news this
Lyles.
year, right? It's freezing May.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure he was marked out on DraftKings even. Excuse me.
I
And
didn't I didn't catch that, but that's crazy.
yeah, and so I checked him out of my player pool. Like it didn't matter. He didn't do anything that
Yeah.
we needed anyway. But I was interested in JaVale McGee if I thought Trey
Mhm.
Lyles was really going to be out. And I'm curious if we have JaVale McGee projected for minutes because as far as I know, he's been playing every game. And we probably haven't projected for like 7 or 8 minutes. That's why he's
Yep.
not showing up. But okay, so he's not even min price on DraftKings anymore. He's 3,800.
That's Isaiah Jackson, right? Exact same thing.
Yeah, yeah, and it looks like neither of them are pulling ownership. I don't mind
No.
taking a couple shots on either of these guys. Probably, maybe Isaiah Jackson has more potential to play a couple more minutes. Miles Turner
Yeah.
gets in early foul trouble or something over JaVale, but I don't hate either of these. I mean, I'm not too interested in Trey Lyles at his price though.
Yeah, it's a weird cheap way. Obviously, I think we would like both of them if they're min price, but if they get 10 minutes or two players that can really give you 17 fantasy points, which on a 2-game slate would be enough to really benefit and kind of be a unique way to probably pay up for some of the studs that might be a little bit lower owned as well because it's tough to fit them in there. So I really don't mind that call. And then looking at the rest of the Kings, you got Fox not pulling in that much ownership. And I always find this fascinating when we get that big of a price difference between one of the sites. He's 9.6 on DraftKings, 10.5 on FanDuel, coming in basically the exact same ownership. Fox is someone that I feel like, and I haven't looked into this, that could be a terrible take, but I feel like if you are playing Sabonis, you also want to play Fox. Fox, though, you can play alone as well. And he has just been crushing. I'm actually very shocked at his ownership. It's probably because are people just trying to get to Halliburton instead of Fox?
Well, Halliburton's really not pulling. I think Halliburton was even
Yeah.
pulling less ownership than Fox
Let's
on
see.
DraftKings anyway.
Let me
And
see.
yeah, I mean, these ownerships. I mean, I'm really playing the ownership game today. I'm going to be over on Fox. I'm going to be over
Yeah.
on Halliburton, and then I'm just going to be under on like these chalk guys. Like I've mentioned, fading Malik Monk. I don't think tonight's the night to fade Malik Monk. His price on
Mhm.
FanDuel is just too cheap, and the price on DraftKings might seem a little bit high, but this dude is just such a good fantasy point per minute guy. But yeah, I love getting over the field on basically everyone on this Kings team. And we have a question about Keegan Murray tonight. Coming in at 4% on DraftKings, 14 on FanDuel. Like, he is an incredible GPP play for the ownership. Like, yeah, he's going to fail probably a majority of the time. But at this ownership, he really doesn't have to work out that often for him to help us win a tournament.
My question for you is, and maybe for the chat as well, only 23 minutes. Is that something that he was just coming back from injury? I'm curious, what do we have him projected minutes wise now? Because that's my only concern is that maybe his minutes are still limited. We have him for 28. And if he does get 28 minutes, great leverage spot, like you just mentioned. Are we very confident that he is going to get 28 minutes? Because before it was about 30 that he was typically getting. And so that's kind of my concern.
So it looks like he missed. Yeah, so with Keegan Murray last season, he was playing all the minutes he could handle, but he really wasn't doing anything when he was on the court. That changed a little towards the end of the season, and we've seen him be a pretty good producer in some games this season. He does have a ceiling. And
Yeah.
another guy that I wanted to mention here that I've been interested in, and I was in on him the first night that he closed, was Sasha Vezenkov,
Okay.
the rookie on the Kings. And his price, he's not min price anymore, so he's
No.
probably not a great GPP play tonight. But the thing is, if he puts up, and I hate throwing this like numbers out there, but he puts up like 12 to 15 fantasy points, and he lets you fit in some of these higher price studs, mid range, stud type guys, then I think that's enough. And he has the potential to close. Maybe it's different. Maybe it was because Keegan Murray was out. But this guy I called him an unknown rookie early in the season, but he was actually the reigning EuroLeague MVP, Sasha Vezenkov. And
Oh,
so
wow.
he's Luka Doncic, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yes.
and his usage is low. But I'm wondering if that's affecting Keegan Murray now that they're
Yeah.
it's adjusting to the NBA. Maybe they're more comfortable giving him more minutes. But I'm curious why Keegan Murray lost his second. He kind of lost his second rotation in the first half, and then he did not close the game. They went with Malik Monk and Trey Lyles at the end there. So
That could honestly just be the Kings. Like we have seen that before, and that's where it's like just tough to figure out. Like Harrison Barnes can get hot and get a lot more minutes. Kevin Herter is also someone that can get hot and get more minutes. And to me, that's kind of where I don't really care which Kings player that I end up on. Like that's in the projection. I just want a piece of them because, again, you mentioned they're a little bit too low owned, and that any one of them can really go off. You know, I'm excluding Fox, excluding Sabonis because obviously they can go off, and really kind of excluding Monk because he's chalk that we're just gonna eat. But between like Herter, the rookie you just mentioned, not going to butcher his name, Harrison Barnes, and even Keegan Murray, I feel like getting one of those is going to be a smart kind of leverage spot. And then Herter as well. I do just want to mention like him getting 35 tonight. I don't think that's too crazy, especially if he maybe gets 33 minutes in this game instead of 30. But again, that's kind of the issue with the Kings right now. It's who's going to get that slight extra run, and it's tough to figure out on a per night basis.
And this is a spot that we might be able to take advantage of because they're rotating their closing guys every night. And we know that Fox and Sabonis are going to close. And we basically know Malik Monk is going to close. It's just a question of out of Harrison Barnes, Kevin Werder. I don't want to throw Vezenkov in there yet because I'm pretty sure he only closed because Keegan Murray was out. But two of those three guys are going to close, Harrison Barnes, Werder, and Keegan Murray. And then I don't know. I think if one of them's having a really good game, they stay on the court. We've seen it with Werder. Werder kind of reminds me of Benedict Mathurin, where if he's playing well, he's going to stay on the court. If he doesn't start out hot, then he's probably going to lose some minutes. And so I like to lean into the uncertainty. And I mean, the King, so if you're only making one lineup, it's kind of tough. But I mean, I'm making, I believe 40, I reserved 40 lineups tonight. And so I'm really just going to mix up these Kings guys.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I mean, I typically do 4 lineups, and like I said, I'll probably 4 to, let's be honest, 10. I end up doing stupid lineups at the end, and those are the ones I've cashed. I'm taking down 2 GPPs on 2 game slates, and they've always been the secondary builds, which just super tilted. I'm like, just the main lineup, just please one time.
Right.
But that's what I'm going to be doing. As I'm going to put in probably Herder in 1. Monk in most of them, and then maybe Barnes, but probably Keegan Murray as well, just because low-owned upside plays. And I think let's try to do a little bit of a sample build. If you guys have any more questions, get those in. We did have one JVal or Al Horford FanDuel GPP. I do think that is a very good question. I'll try to pull up both of them here on FanDuel.
I mean, if we just give an answer, we're going to be wrong almost half the time, right? And looking at my FanDuel build from pre-stream, now things will change. When I talk about stuff on stream and we get late news, like things are always going to change. If you're not sure, hop into Discord and you can ask if you're interested. But I got exactly the same amount of both of them, JoVal and Al Horford. The prices are similar. I do think JoVal has a higher ceiling, but Al Horford is going to hit like his, I don't know, like a slightly above his like medium outcome a little bit more often. But I think they're both great plays, and so I'd probably just mix them up if you're making a bunch of lineups.
And just kind of looking at it from the model, it likes JVal slightly more, so a little bit better leverage as well.
And if you can do something with the $600 savings, then yeah, go with Horford. It's really not a big deal. But if you're not going to do anything with the 600, then yeah, maybe just pay the extra 600 and get to JoVal.
Solid. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and get into kind of the closing thoughts, kind of sample build. Do we want to start out with Fox and Halliburton? I feel like those were 2 players, and probably Monk. I feel like those were the players that we were pretty good getting leverage on.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a GPP build. Like for this slate, I don't even know how to build like a not GPP build. But if we're starting with Fox and Halliburton, we're already getting pretty good leverage, I think, just because there's not going to be a lot of builds that have both of them. Like most of these lineups are not going to have either of them. And so if we're playing both together, I think that's pretty strong.
And I will say, I personally think McCollum's my favorite leverage spot tonight. So that might be a little bit too unique to get all 3 of them. And I don't really want to do that. But I do think like that's playing one of the or 2 of those 3 in all your builds. I like that approach, but we'll go Monk at the shooting guard spot here, kind of being some chalk there. We settled on JVal, I think, as well, right?
Yeah, Center. Yeah, I think we can go for that.
Al Horford, eat the chalk there. We kind of both liked him as a play. Okay, and then I feel like it's kind of up in the air. Obviously, 3.6 probably can't make that work. Probably would have to go down to McCollum or What other Andrew Nembhard potentially? Kind of where would you want to maybe pivot off of maybe Derek White? And that's obviously where it starts to get unique.
And now sorting the model by DK value, Bruce Brown and Miles Turner are alone at the top, followed by Joval. And it's like I really hate to go against the model, but I do think Bruce Brown is a. But the thing is, on a 2-game slate, he doesn't have to have a ceiling outcome to help us win a contest. If he puts up
True.
just low 20s, that's enough. And
Well,
you know, and
let's sort it by his price tag. I kind of like doing this process because you got Kevin Herter there, you got Monk there, who we already want to get to. Herbert Jones, Obi Toppin's a player that we kind of thought decent spot to gain leverage on. Like, I don't know.
I mean, the first thing I noticed when sorting by value is there's really no value under 5K.
Yeah.
The first guy under 5K you have to scroll down for, and it's Naismith, Pritchard, Hauser. And it's like, yeah, we probably just have to get uncomfortable and play, one, maybe even two of these guys. So
I think that's fair. I don't know. So I know the model isn't suggesting this. I think I like Nembhard
okay,
most, but
yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, the ownership is kind of it might not be that high though. 34% at 4,100. Like, he's really the pay down that I think I would feel most comfortable with, especially in this. I mean, they're both high totals, but I mean, we have to eat some of the bad chalk that is uncomfortable, but Nemhard doesn't seem too bad, even though the model says no.
Yeah. I think I'm seeing why Brown is kind of chalk because who else are you going to play here? Like, I don't mind Trey Murphy. It does feel a little bit risky. We could go with your rookie. Not terrible, not great. You got Matherin there. It's either that or you're paying it for Jaylen Brown, maybe trying to get lucky with Harrison Barnes. I guess I kind of get it. I just don't like it. I really don't like it.
Yeah, builds are going to be kind of tough tonight if we're trying to squeeze in two studs.
Yeah. And J-Val, I mean, let's try with Bruce Brown, I guess. I don't want to do it. I really don't. 6 leftover, 6K leftover on average. Obi, 6.8. I guess Derek White. I don't know.
Yeah, Derek White. I mean, we could go with the super GPP play, Keegan Murray, Herbert Jones. I think Trey Murphy, I think that his minutes are a little bit too low to want to really get there.
Yeah. Let's see this real quick. Herbert Jones instead of Brown, does that open up anything? Miles Turner, the chalk. Woohoo.
All right, let's do it.
Sure, whatever. I don't want to do that, but that is weird. So I guess I get the process of why Brown or Turner is now a little bit chalk. I don't know. Who do you hate more tonight, Brown or Turner? I feel like that's a great question.
I think I hate both of them equally, but it seems like Bruce Brown is going to be more prevalent in my builds just because it's just, I mean, we have to play someone, right?
Yeah. Fun. I mean, that being said, Tatum's going to be tough to get to. Jaylen Brown's going to be tough to get to, as we saw there. It's a very interesting day for sure.
Yeah, the DraftKings builds are so hard. FanDuel's a little bit easier. We have a little bit more flexibility in being able to play, not to be disrespectful, but not trash players. And it's like I usually like the difficult days because I think that on average, and you guys watching the show too, we're going to make better decisions than the field on average, especially if we're using the model. But today is a particularly difficult day to build on DraftKings.
I would say it's because they prepared for it. They had like more time. So the pricing, like let's say for, albeit probably 2 stupid plays in, who is it? Isaiah Jackson, JaVale. Was it JaVale McGee? No, it was who was the other center? For the
was it Trey Lyles? Or
potential. Anyways, they typically wouldn't be that high priced, and you could kind of get away with them just giving you 10 or 12 fantasy points. Where tonight, with them being priced up, makes it a lot more risky. It makes it more, for lack of a better term, dumb. But you kind of need to be dumb tonight. It's honestly is one of those weird slates.
Yeah, and I think so. I am playing lighter on DraftKings than usual, and that had nothing to do. Like that was even before I looked at the how difficult it was to build a lineup. But it looks like that's a smart decision. I'm playing a little heavier on FanDuel. Other than the players we mentioned, I really don't think we have to go off the board to squeeze anyone in. Like Neemias Queta on the Boston, like who the hell is that? But he's been getting some playing time. He's 3,200. I don't think we have to go there. Cody Zeller might be interesting, 3,500 on the Pelicans. If Jovel gets into foul trouble, they need a big man on the court. He's been playing with Larry Nance out. There could be like I'd rather play him than Luke Cornett. But it's like, yeah, we have a few super cheap centers, but none of them project well at all.
I'm mad at you for tossing out Zeller because you didn't mention him before. I was like, I'm good. I cannot play him, not even thinking about it. But he has been getting 10 to 17 or so minutes. And anytime a big gets that many minutes, especially on a small 2-game slate, kind of interesting.
I mean, he's going to be like 1% owned, and all it takes is 2 quick fouls on Jovel to play himself into maybe even 18 minutes. Yep. And so like he's 1% owned. It's hardly ever going to work out, but it only has to work out once to win a GPP. So
I'm looking at his game like he's had 1, 2, 3 or so games at 20 DraftKings points, which at this price tag tonight, if you got lucky, that's not terrible. That's more than 1% of the time that he's crushed it in terms of what we would need tonight.
Yeah, and it's like it's a tight spread, so we're never ever predicting blowout on this slate. But I don't know, just throwing it out there. And like I said, there's not necessarily 2 centers we're dying to play on either site tonight, and both games are a tight spread. I'm actually kind of surprised how tight the Boston-Indiana spread is.
Yeah, that is definitely. I mean, they're both pretty tight, but 4.5, 3.5, it is kind of crazy for both of those. I'm actually really surprised at the over and under. Again, I think that points to a lot of the players just getting more minutes than what they're projected to get. We did get a question real quick, so let's answer. Derek White or Drew Holiday?
Let me pull this up. So I did get more Drew Holiday in my early builds over Derek White. The price different. I mean, Derek White is actually more expensive than Drew Holiday over on FanDuel. I mean, only 100 more. He's pulling 1% more ownership.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have not been in on Derek White, but he's been fantastic. So it's hard to say I want to get away from him. But I do think that Drew Holiday is slightly stronger. I guess the model slightly prefers Derek White tonight. So it's literally a coin flip though in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Drew gets a couple steals, and that leads to a little bit more production. It is a toss up for sure. Any closing thoughts here before we kind of send it off to the Discord? The Discord that's going live at 6 or whatever at the top of the hour.
We actually don't have a Discord live today for the 2-game slate, but I will be in there. If you guys have any questions, feel free. It's not just going to be me answering. We have, Jayhawks usually in there, and the other members. We have some pretty strong members in there. We're all interested in, helping each other out. So
we got a question coming in from Justin here. Do we like Naismith on this one?
Do we like Naismith? It's uncomfortable, but it's like, I kind of want to play a little bit more Obi Toppin tonight, which I'm wondering. Let me just look at their position real quick. And Obi Toppin and Naismith did share the court for a few minutes, but they do sub out for each other a little bit. I don't hate it. I probably wouldn't play both, though. But Naismith did play 30 minutes off the bench without Tyrese Halliburton. It's probably going to be different with Tyrese in. But, I mean, his price allows us some flexibility in our lineups. I don't hate it.
It's randomly. If Obi was small forward eligible, how much would you have on him tonight? Ownership.
This is so disgusting, but I'd probably have probably all.
Right? Oh God, I hate this slate.
It's we're gonna be doing some uncomfortable things, but you gotta be comfortable being uncomfortable if you want to win in large field GPP. Now for small field, I still don't know if that's any easier tonight, but
yeah, honestly, I like cash. You mean or?
Just like small field high risk, maybe if we're playing for like satellite tickets or the 100 man tournaments on FanDuel. We've been the talk of our Discord recently, and we've seen some members do very well. I've been doing pretty well in them myself. I think that's like one of the best things that we can be doing if we're playing DFS, especially to try and build a bankroll. I would say stick to the $1 and $2 leagues because the top players can't enter them, and just enter as many as pop up.
I do have kind of another question, and then we can begin out of here. So me and you have been talking kind of off air a little bit about like drafts, best ball drafts and whatnot. This could actually kind of be a sneaky kind of best ball draft, and I kind of don't mind the idea of using the data, though if indexed, to kind of maybe potentially gain some really good leverage on the field, and you can kind of look at the ownerships as well. Well, like once going through it, Is that something you'd maybe potentially be interested in? Because obviously Halliburton, Tatum, Fox, those will probably be the first three picks. And then from there, to me, it's probably, I mean, Sabonis still probably, but it really becomes a toss up for a decent amount of the picks. Is there any maybe potential, I guess?
Yeah, there definitely is. So I think that the short slates are a lot more interesting than the large slates for those daily underdog drafts, just
Mhm.
because, like in the last rounds, when it's a large slate, we're still mostly getting star players. And even then, like there's six, seven star players. Sure, Jokic and Luka are going to be at the top, but there's still so much randomness with someone going off, and there's not as big of an advantage. But in the 2, 3 game slates, I think there's such a large edge in those. And I've mentioned before the double ups usually don't fill, and I've only been negative in the double ups in the month of November one day, and it was -$5. So I
And
think the
that's
double ups on underdog are just it's so easy.
That's what I was going to say. It's on underdog. So, what about you? Ever try DraftKings at all? I mean, I don't really love their drafting platform as much.
I did try it out a little bit before I got hooked on the underdog drafts,
Mhm.
and there's definitely a big edge on the DraftKings. It's not like flash drafts, but like those little 3-man drafts that you can do,
Mhm.
especially for single gamers. If you just pay attention to like minutes projections, it's just we can just play cookie cutter and just do basic like play ABC basically and let the other players
Yeah.
make mistakes.
And so that goes to the point, guys. Like literally, just pull up the model and just kind of draft based off of that. If you want to get a little bit unique with the ownership play, you could, but more times than not, it's crazy the amount of weird picks that people will make. And honestly, there's a lot of weird natural mistakes that kind of occur if someone has them queued up. And I don't know, this happens to me on Underdog a little bit where they'll like disconnect randomly or something like that and it'll be an auto pick. And just, I see that stuff happen for a lot of other people as well. So it's just maybe some people have it set up to auto draft and some injury news comes in. Like there's just so many little nuances there where you can gain an edge there as well. So just kind of mention that because it is a 2-game slate. There's more than one way to attack this slate. We got DraftKings, we got FanDuel, you can do underdog, you can do drafts on DraftKings as well.
And I did see someone ask us to do another underdog daily draft, and I'm gonna either do that tomorrow or for Thursday slate, I believe. But we are gonna do one for the in-season tournament this week, and I'll just say on those, like the biggest edge is definitely just paying attention and being tuned into the injury news. There's so many times where a guy is, I think maybe 70% not playing the next day, and they'll still go first, second in the draft, and just I avoid those guys. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but if it works out 70% of the time, then we're probably doing pretty well.
Or kind of vice versa. If someone maybe was ruled out that then becomes active, I
Hmm.
feel like their ADP does not rise typically as much as it should.
Yeah, and just more so than avoiding those guys, think of who's going to fill in those minutes, who gets a boost, because people just really aren't adjusting. Especially if you're doing them the night before, it's a little bit riskier. But
Mhm.
that's when I think the biggest edge there is that people don't have projections yet. So
Yep. We got Barry saying Jalen Smith out. Yeah, we already kind of touched on that. That's really where the only value is on the slate potentially is with that Pacers news. So it's an interesting slate. So yeah, any second closing thoughts for tonight?
I'll just say, I really think that we want to play a little bit more of the New Orleans Sacramento game. I think they're compared to the Boston Indiana game that the ownerships are a little bit more. I think we can take advantage of the ownerships in the Sacramento game a little bit more, and so I think we want to play those guys. I just think we want to play more of them.
I guess would you just want to eat the chalk in the first game with maybe Bruce Brown, Al Horford, Derek White, not Miles Turner, and then just fill in maybe with the late game, hoping that no one else really goes off?
Yeah, I'm happy you said that because actually, yeah, we like the rotations seem to be more set in stone in the Boston Indiana game, but in the Pelicans game, like there's a little uncertainty with how they're going to handle Trey Murphy, and then in Sacramento, like I said, like we don't know who's going to close, and so just lean into the uncertainty, take some risks, and it's not going to work out sometimes, but when it does work out, then it probably helps us finish near the top of a GPP.
Yep. My kind of closing thought is I probably will be pretty high overweight on the field on CJ McCollum, so please don't family tonight, CJ McCollum.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to be over the field on CJ as well.
All right, thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it. I think it'll be our normal time tomorrow, or we're gonna push it back because of the start time. I don't.
Yeah, we'll have to see what time. The games start at 7:30 Eastern again tomorrow, so it's possible we might push it back. But we'll put an update in the Discord.
Okay. All right. Thanks everyone.